get rid of our own. We live to this higher standard. Bob Menendez is walking around the senator from New Jersey, and just this morning, new revelations coming about like jewelry that his wife got. We were supposed to win this race. Take a listen to what Mike Lawler, congressman from New York, from that area, and then let me just play that for you.
From everything I'm hearing, turnout in Republican precincts is up. Democrat precincts are average. And so I think tonight you're going to see Mozzie beat Suozzi. Tom Suozzi will be a 6-time loser by the end of the night.
All right. That was Lawler. This was supposed to be, we should have won this district. And then here's George Santos himself last night on News Nation talking about it.
These are what I called disenfranchised, self-radicalized Democrats who are voting Republican for the last 2 election cycles. So if that's where the bulk of the majority of the Democrat turnout is, Suozzi's underwater. He's in trouble. I've seen the numbers. I've won both parts of this district. Great Neck by 79% of the vote. Jericho by 54% of the vote. So, and with majority of Democrats having turned out. So if those are where the numbers are falling tonight, she wins this by easily 2 to 4 points.
So, look, as I said, I don't want to spend a ton of time rehashing all of the, it was the weather's fault. Yes, there were factors not in our side, but we got smoked. 50,000 votes, 10 points. This wasn't close. So I hope to God the folks at the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, the chairman, Richard Hudson from North Carolina, and the rest of the leadership is saying, all right, guys, what are we doing so that we don't do that again? All these things should be in our favor right now with Biden and the border and the rest of the chaos that's happening, inflation, higher interest rates, people are paying more. We're all paying more at the grocery store. We were playing with a full house. We shouldn't have been able to lose this hand, and we got smoked. So if you're sitting back right now, do I want to go nuts and light the house on fire? No, but don't walk away thinking nothing's wrong. We should have won this district. Congresswoman, good to see you. There's a lot to get to that happened yesterday. And I want to start with sort of, I don't even know if I'd call it the bad, because I think it leads into the good. And the bad was we lost a special election last night in New York's 3rd district. Yeah. What are your takeaways from that race, from what you've seen, if anything?
Well, look, we did not have a good showing of Republicans that came out to the polls. Now, you can blame that on people not being excited, it being a special election and numbers being down. You can blame that on the weather. I know that they had terrible snow in New York, but the fact is that we lost a seat. Right. We already had a very, very narrow, very thin majority. We lost a seat. I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to pick that back up in November. When people actually know that there's an election that gets advertised. But it's tough being in the majority and having such a narrow majority. But it was also terrible precedent that we set when we kicked that member out of his seat.
Right.
Before he had been able to go to court, before he had really had his time to even be found guilty of anything. I think it was a terrible precedent that we set. I voted against, kicking him out, but the majority of our members did. That happened, and now we lost a seat to a Democrat last night.
It's funny you bring that up. Like Santos tweeted out last night, -1, right? We're down now to a 2-seat majority, and I'm waking up this morning reading stories about how Bob Menendez, the New Jersey senator, his wife was getting all sorts of necklaces and things like this, and I hear over and over again from our side, from activists on our side, why do we always do this? We go after our own. To your point, he hadn't been convicted of anything. We throw him out. We give them a victory while their side sits there with a dude who's got gold bricks stuffed in a vest that has his name on it and the seal of the United States.
It's a great question, John. It's a great question. Yeah.
But I'm with you. Like I can make a bunch of excuses, right? It's like football or any game. Like, at the end of the day, a loss is a loss. You can help mitigate it or explain it away. But I am concerned about what that portends for November, because this wasn't like razor thin. Tom Suozzi blew this thing out, and all day long, people were saying, well, here's the different factors. What I worry about is, and look, I've said special elections are special, right? I've been through enough of them. But there are takeaways, and I worry about whether there's a compelling message, whether there's a get out the vote, and the mechanics are right. Sometimes we're victim to the fact that there's a better candidate and the mechanics or whatever. But I am concerned about what that portends for November, and wonder how much you guys as a conference are going to double down and say, okay, we lost this race, but here's what we're doing.
Well, I mean, they actually did have a conversation, as you can imagine, this morning in conference about it, and doubling down and making sure, there's $25 million was spent on that special election. I mean, a lot of money. I mean, ridiculous amount of money was spent on that election. But November is going to be a burner.
Yeah.
You're going to have races across the country. Obviously, you got the presidential race is going to be huge and on the forefront. Lots of money is going to be spent on that, and I think you're going to see Republicans having a very strong message when we start talking about what's happening at the border. When we start talking about what's happening in our economy, what's happening with national security. Those things are affecting everybody all across the country. And I think that's a very strong message. Republicans are passing, bills that are solutions to those things. We're talking about solutions. We're seeing an administration that is one by one taking down everything that was working under the previous administration. I've seen 18% increase in inflation since Biden's taken over. You've seen over 10 million illegal immigrants come into our country since Biden's come in. You've seen wars that are breaking out over in Ukraine, in Israel that we never saw before. And these are all happening under this administration. And at the same time,
but you just summed it up exactly. You gave a great elevator speech, and I hear Beth van Duyne say that, and I go, okay, I'm on your team. I vote for you. But that's what worries me the most about what happened last night. New York is seeing this massive influx of migrants, illegals that are taking jobs, that are taking over schools, the deck is stacked in our favor. I mean, there isn't the most hardened liberal that can honestly tell you what's going well into the Biden administration, coming on the heels of a special counsel report that just talks about how the guy's not with it. And then we lose a special election by 10 points. And I'm thinking to myself, on paper, she seemed like a good candidate. I know President Trump went after her for not endorsing him, but I mean, she fit the perfect model of, she was a woman of color. She had a background of service, and she's a tough woman, had fought in the Israeli Defense Forces. I go, if a woman like that, now granted she did get outspent and all that kind of stuff, the weather was bad and all those things, he had high name ID, etc. But I agree with everything you just said, and I go, okay, I get worried though, because everything should be falling in our direction.
No, you're right. I mean, things should be falling, and it's our job. And I say our job, not just Congress, the Republicans in Congress job, but all of our jobs to be talking about those issues. Yeah. We tend to, sometimes go down the rabbit hole on things that really aren't going to make a difference. And we get caught up in those traps. But most Americans right now are feeling the pain in their pocketbook. They're seeing the threats in their street. They're seeing increases in crime. They're seeing their kids not being able to go to school, perhaps because they're having to move the kids out of the school to put illegal immigrants and to house them. That's happening in communities across the country. You're seeing sex trafficking and human trafficking and increases in crime. I mean, I have these roundtables with law enforcement officers in my district, and they'll tell you in Dallas and in Fort Worth, you're seeing double-digit increases in some crimes as a direct result of what's happening at the border. It is our job to talk about those issues. And even if that means going on, other media programs, getting the pushback, we're still having to do it. Right. Because we have to be able to reach all Americans and not just those that are in our are already in our scope.